opioids beyond what we're reading in the papers. And also, I've got a special treat for you. Did you watch Sex and the City? Author Candace Bushnell, the author of the books, the person that the Carrie character was based on, is actually joining us on the program. And we have a special little contest and giveaway for you to end your week on maybe a high note. Stay tuned. Okay, it is 67 degrees here in New York City, going up to 89 degrees and sunny. So we're having, we're back to having a hot one, which is nice.
Just in time.
Well, at least we're not in Florida. So that's kind of rough down there. The storm Hurricane Dorian has strengthened to a Category 2. They're now expecting it to be a Category 4 as it makes landfall on the Florida coast. It is expected to make landfall between Central and South Florida, so anywhere from the Keys on up to, I guess, whatever's in the middle.
Are they saying when? It's going to hit?
Yes, I believe it has slowed down. So the problem is it's a slow moving storm, which means lots of rain. So they're expecting up to, I believe what last I heard was 15 inches of rain, even inland. So they've got all the wind, all the storm surge, all the stuff that's happening on the coast, and then moving inland, they have that storm that could slowly track. The last time I heard, I think it even pushed off a day. So they're thinking the end of Monday is when it's going to be making its landfall. Keep your eye on it. I hope if you're in the Florida area or have loved ones down there, you are in contact. You're encouraging them to make the long trip up the peninsula and out of there. It's not a good scene down there. So I guess people are battening down the hatches. Do you think Trump will send money to Florida?
He's probably just going to nuke the eye of the storm and turn it into a Category 5.
Oh, would that would be, or a category who the hell knows what. Yeah. So anyway, we're keeping our eye on that as per usual. King, let's start with a message from the king. A message from the king. A message from the king.
That cracks me up. But please be seated and please put your shoes back on. So
and your pants.
I did not order that, but I will. So a couple of categories. First, blackface. Governor Kay Ivey apologized yesterday for wearing blackface in a racist skit while she was in college at Auburn University. Audio surfaced of her then fiance talking about this play that they were in, and it referred to some character that I didn't know that I'm still going to be looking into.
That's Alabama, right?
Yeah, Alabama. Now, she's a Republican, but the Republicans don't have a lock on this kind of stuff. There have been Democrats who've had a history of doing this, too.
Yeah.
Everybody was in that pool.
Right.
And
Isn't it nice that blackface is definitely agreed upon to be not a good thing now? I mean, we've made a lot of progress in that area.
Well, you would think so, but even when I was in law school, we organized a talent show, and I played drums with a piano player and three of my classmates, my black classmate sisters, wore robes, and they performed as the Supremes, as in the Supreme Court. And then we had this guy who came up and called himself Little Willie the Blues Man from down south. And he was the last act, and he was hiding. We didn't know where he was. He came out in blackface, and the whole show got turned out. My study buddy and I ran up on the stage. I snatched the mic. He ripped out so many of the chords. We couldn't get the show back together for a long time. And it was hurtful because one of our classmates was a breakdancer, one of the few black women breakdancers there were.
Wow.
She had her grandmother, her mother, and her two aunts in the audience. They were from the South, and when I saw their faces while they looked at this, it was a flashback. They were horrified, and so we just took action. So there still lingers. People just don't seem to get it.
Why don't black people do whiteface?
Some do. I think there have been a couple of.
I don't think that would go over, so negatively. For example, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it could be fun.
Hey. Let's
try it. We're live streaming. I'm sure we'll grow the audience by quite a bit if you come in here.
Yeah. Maybe the outrage people will be healing. They'll realize what's going on. So.
Oh boy. Well, that would be kind of fun. We'll see what happens there. The New York Times is reporting that a ring. They're reporting on how a ring of women allegedly recruited the girls for Jeff Epstein. Right? There's prosecutors are putting these women under scrutiny. There's something that rubs me the wrong way about this. Okay, It's like the front page of the New York Times. Jeffrey Epstein was a disgusting man. I'm sorry to bring this down to gender. Why is the focus on the women who helped? Okay, we need to prosecute everyone who helped. But I think this idea that like, and there were women who helped. Yeah, I think we can all agree that women can be horrible too. Any gender, horribleness cuts across gender lines. But the fact that they're focusing on it really, yeah.
No,
I'm at a lack for words.
that completely burns me up because not only does that show the gender bias, but the class bias. What about all these rich men? Why aren't they being rounded up
Thank
and
you.
perp walked? They should be brought out before anybody who was economically challenged and was taking part in this. Those people should be a lower tier.
Yeah, or the ones who did the raping or the why? Hello. Yeah, no, but then you can trust the New York Times to spin it so that we're all like, women hate each other. Let's keep putting that trope forward that women don't support each other. You're old, New York Times. Get with the times. You've lost your edge. Well, that was a while ago, but still. Boy, the whole world is on fire. Hong Kong, Italy, Greece. Although Italy's going in a positive direction for once. That's a plus. They've kind of ousted some of their right wingers there, and it's an unfolding situation, but it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to finding out what's happening there. What are you doing for Labor Day?
I'm going upstate to a barbecue. We don't use the word picnic anymore because that also has negative and blackface implications.
Really?
Yeah. The word came from the word that was used by slave owners to describe little black kids. They were called pickaninnies.
Oh.
And so the picnic was an idea that the whites learned from watching the blacks sitting out in the fields with their blankets and putting their food together, and they said, "Oh wow, this is really great." But they had to call
cultural appropriation from the beginning.
Yes.
They're like, they're sitting outside.
Yes. And then to use a derogatory term to describe it. So I would urge everybody to think about calling it a barbecue, which is what I'm going to.
I like a barbecue.
And it's going to be a upstate civil rights lawyer who's done a lot of policing cases.
Will there be vegetarian options at the barbecue?
I'm bringing mine just
Good
in
man.
case because I love the smell of that grilled meat, but I don't eat it.
That's excellent. Very good.
How about you?
I am going upstate to a friend's house, and another friend of mine is running. He's one of these runners who runs, 100 miles, 25 miles. It's craziness. And so we like to watch from the sidelines, clap, eat bagged goodies, that kind of stuff. So I'm going up there, which is nice because it'll be nice to get out of the city. I hope everyone can get out of Florida. It was rough. If you're staying in town, we've got on Sunday at 11 a.m. there is a talk for heading. I keep thinking we're like on the eve of destruction here. It's really no good, especially with the burning of the rainforest. There's a new article out. I believe it's in BuzzFeed. I scan a whole bunch of places before I come here, and I'll find you the actual thing. But it's saying, the burning Amazon can actually go to like a tipping point where the Amazon basically cannot stand its, and deforests itself. It basically just cannot stand. So we are playing with, fire.
Yeah, I was picturing the next generation talking about the Amazon desert.
Oh, don't picture that. Try to picture something positive. Use the new age theology that says like you got to picture the.
Okay, everybody, visualize the lush Amazon regrowing.
Yes, let's visualize the lush Amazon regrowing.
And them carrying Barcelona away.
That too, yeah, that's a great idea. By the way, people are freaking out because a defense agency has asked people to help finding dark underground tunnels as soon as possible on the internet. This is the, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency that oversees research and development initiatives aimed at developing breakthrough technologies for national security. You may have heard of it. Michael? What? Everybody's making faces over there. Okay.
I don't get it.
Well, I don't get it. We're lost. Anyway, they put out a tweet saying, attention city dwellers, DARPA, which has a dark history, shall we say, and if you go on the internet and you Google DARPA, you're going to get like they're controlling the weather and whatnot. I'm sure some of our listeners might know about that. They tweeted this Wednesday. We're interested in identifying university-owned or commercially managed underground and urban tunnels and facilities able to host research and experimentation. It's short notice, and they were looking for it by Friday. So they want underground tunnels by Friday. Don't worry, nothing to see here. Here's just a quick tweet. Yeah, so people on the internet are kind of up in arms around what that is all about. You know, there's a lot. What are y'all worried about? 212-209-2877. We'll discuss our fears, and then we'll have a good time having the lady from Sex and the City on in the second half of the show. You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano here on this going to be 89-degree day and sunny. I don't believe it's going to be as humid as those days that we had, not too long ago. The coolest day of the week is going to be next Thursday at 76. It's going 89 today, 83 Saturday, and partly cloudy. Sunday, 78, partly cloudy. Monday, a little bit rainy on Monday. But this is nothing to sneeze at because we do not have hurricane force winds coming at us. So always something to be grateful for. You're listening to Waking Up. We'll be back right after this with our guest, Dean Baker, who's going to continue our conversation about Johnson & Johnson making a ton of money from the opioid crisis and how they got to do that. Dean always gets right into the weeds so that we can understand what's the mechanism. Yeah, of course they're going to make money, but there's a specific mechanism that we can deal with to help undermine that. Oh, and also I did want to give you the public talk, the heading for extinction talk. That's how we got off on we're on the eve of destruction conversation. But, the ecological crisis that we're in the midst of, which is basically the sixth mass extinction event that this planet has experienced. Scientists believe we may have entered a period of abrupt climate breakdown, and so this is an emergency. This ain't yesterday's climate change. This is climate emergency. It's a public talk. It's happening this Sunday at 11 a.m. It's at the Star Bar, STARR Bar, which is at 214 Star Street in Brooklyn. 214 Star Street in Brooklyn. 11237 is the zip. Again, Sunday, September 1st, 11 a.m. Star Bar, 214 Star Street, Brooklyn. It is, I believe, free. So public talk, climate speakers from Extinction Rebellion are going to share the latest climate science on where the planet is heading, discuss some of the current psychology around climate change, and offer solutions through their study of social movements. Everyone is welcome. It is, in fact, free. There will be time for questions. So I wish I was actually going to be in town. So many times I wish I could get out of town, and now I actually wish I'm going to be in town. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Here's a story that impacts the entire planet. The Amazon rainforest is on fire. This is what everyone needs to know. The Amazon rainforest is the largest remaining tropical rainforest in the world. It releases a massive amount of water into the atmosphere and oceans through evaporation. That water helps regulate both ocean currents and temperatures around the globe, which helps keep our climate stable. The rainforest also contains a ton of carbon. In fact, it contains 90 to 140 billion metric tons of carbon. Like all plants, the rainforest trees capture that carbon from the atmosphere and then convert it to oxygen. And the Amazon rainforest is so big, it produces 20% of the world's oxygen. That's why people call it the Earth's lungs. And right now, huge swaths of those lungs are on fire. While fires are not uncommon in the Amazon during its dry season from July to October, this year is setting records. Already, there have been more than 75,000 forest fires recorded in Brazil. An 80% increase when compared.
It always makes me feel good. You're waking up with Juliana and King on 99.5 FM WBAI. This week, an Oklahoma judge found companies Johnson & Johnson and others responsible for the opioid epidemic there and ordered the company to pay hundreds of millions in damages. Not enough, as we spoke about yesterday. King said, this is like a slap on the wrist. We'll get Dean's thoughts about that as well. Also reported this week, the Sackler family will pay out $3 billion of their own money to resolve thousands of federal and state lawsuits. It seems that the people responsible for the opioid epidemic that has killed 400,000 of our brothers and sisters nationwide, these people are finally being made to pay, at least some, for the tragedy they caused. But it's important that we understand how these companies were allowed to push these dangerous drugs on the public. And the mainstream media isn't about to make that entirely clear. Do you know? Do I know? Dean Baker knows, and we're happy to have him on the show today. Dean is the co-founder of the Center for Economic and Policy Research. He's the author of several books, including Rigged: How Globalization and the Rules of the Modern Economy Were Structured to Make the Rich Richer. His blog, Beat the Press, provides commentary on economic reporting and keeps us all in the know and sane with real understanding of what's going on. Dean, thanks for joining us again on the program. It's great to have you here.
Sure. Thanks a lot for having me on.
So can you explain to us, give us a brief update about what happened this week with Johnson & Johnson and the Pursue Pharma, and why did they get in trouble?
Well, the Johnson & Johnson case, they were the first one to actually go to trial. So there have been a number of settlements where states have sued drug companies, Johnson & Johnson being one, of course, but Purdue Pharma being the more visible one, over their pushing of drugs and pushing of opioids. And specifically, just to be clear, because I think there's a lot of confusion on this, it's not that opioids can be harmful, because the point, of course, is these are pain relievers and they're often helpful, but they misrepresented the risk of addiction. The claim is deliberately misrepresented that in order to increase sales. So in any case, there had been a number of settlements previously. The Oklahoma case was the first one to go to trial, and you ended up with a settlement, I think it was $550 million. I forget the exact sum, but it was in that neighborhood. And this, of course, was against Johnson & Johnson, and people have been saying, well, that's chicken feed. I'm a little bit less inclined towards the chicken feed argument, because it's important to remember this is just one state. So, if you just do your arithmetic on it, Oklahoma is a mid-sized state. I haven't looked at its population, but we'll just multiply by 50. It gets you about 26, 27 billion. It's one company. Johnson & Johnson wasn't the biggest pusher, of course. Purdue Pharma was, and there were others. So that doesn't strike me as trivial. Perhaps it should have been more, but I'm sure Johnson & Johnson wasn't laughing about it, and they're sitting there thinking, well, California, the other states, we were going to be looking at a lot more money.
Dean,
so it wasn't trivial. One could certainly argue it should be bigger, but they aren't laughing about it.
Dean, what is the hubris that the other companies settled out of court, but Johnson & Johnson said, no, I think we'll beat this? It seems like there's something there to point out.
Well, they are culpable to different extents, and I'll be clear, I don't know the specific evidence. So again, the issue here is how much did they misrepresent the safety, the non-addictive features of the opioids that they were pushing. So I don't know the evidence there. Perhaps it wasn't that strong. I'm not saying it wasn't, but that may be the case. So I thought, why don't we take a chance? And again, this is Oklahoma. It's not California. It's not New York. So it's not a really big state. So they might have figured, okay, let's try that here and see what happens, just to know what our risks are if we play hardball with other states.
So in your recent blog post, you write about how the companies are incentivized to push their lethal drugs on the public, and you also talked about other drugs in the past. I believe there was some links in there where you could get into a study that you guys have done. Can you talk about why that is? What incentivizes these companies to push their drugs on the public?
Yes, this is something that's just kind of mind-boggling to me, that I'm sort of the only one saying this, because it should be very evident. The reason why a company like Johnson & Johnson or Purdue Pharma has such a big stake in pushing their drugs, getting as many people as possible to buy them, is because they have patent monopolies. Those are government-granted patent monopolies. So if this drug was always selling as a generic, sure, they could still make money on it, and just like, companies that sell paper cups want people to buy more paper cups. But there's only so much effort they're going to go to get people to buy more paper cups. They're unlikely to send people around to lie to doctors, tell them this is non-addictive when they know it's addictive. They're unlikely to do that if this was simply a generic drug. So the point here is that we're giving them government-granted monopolies, allow them to charge prices that are 10, oftentimes as much as 100 times above the free market price, the generic price. It gives them an incredible incentive to be dishonest, to push drugs that they know are not as effective as they claim or as safe as they claim. And it happens again and again. So it's not, this is an extreme case, of course, because the consequences, you said, 400,000 deaths. The consequences, of course, are incredible and horrible. But it happens all the time that drug companies misrepresent the safety and effectiveness of their drugs because we've given them patent monopolies, which in turn give them an enormous incentive. it's not an accident in the sense that the whole point of a patent monopoly, give people incentive, but it gives them incentive to do good things, research and develop the drug. It also gives them incentive to do bad things, push them when they know it's not a good drug.
There's an interesting phenomenon, I think, that happens around the opioid crisis because of this idea that addiction is something that is partially on the patient, as opposed to, say, when Vioxx killed a whole bunch of coronary disease people. So, do you think that helped Johnson & Johnson and these other companies get away with what they're doing for so long when it comes to opioids?
It's almost certainly the case. So we always have this, that we could say, any medical condition, partly you could always, almost always attribute. I suppose there's some cases where there's literally nothing you could say the patient could have done. But you could always say there's some mix, and in this case, it's, of course, extreme. They always say, well, you don't have to be addicted. It's, it's a question of personal will. And,
they don't recognize the disease model of addiction.
Exactly. So it's easier for people just to say, 400,000 people died, but it was their fault. So yes, that's certainly a big part of the story. Whereas the case you're referring to with Vioxx, again, it's a very, very famous case where Merck was the manufacturer of Vioxx. They had evidence that Vioxx, of course, an arthritis drug, and that it increased the risk of heart attack and stroke for people with heart conditions, and they didn't reveal that evidence. And this, again, they ended up paying a considerable amount in settlement, but this is a very, very serious issue because obviously there's a lot of overlap between people who suffer from arthritis and people with heart conditions. So this is a predictable outcome that they chose to ignore to make more money on their drug.
So you propose finding alternatives to patent-financed research. What do you mean by that? Because this idea of patents are to allow companies and incentivize companies to put all the money and resources into research so that they can then get their money back out of it. How can we incentivize research without patents?
Yeah, it's been really frustrating to me that, we've been watching the presidential campaign, and you have many very ambitious proposals being floated in a variety of areas, particularly, of course, from Senator Warren and Senator Sanders. But on the area of prescription drugs, where they've actually done good things along these lines in the Senate, they said nothing about changing the incentive structure. So as it stands now, tell companies, go ahead, get a patent, and then sell drugs, often for just crazy, crazy prices, hundreds of thousands. Now some of them are selling for millions, millions of dollars. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. Instead, the alternative that I've proposed, and again, both Senator Sanders and Warren have sponsored some legislation that goes steps in this direction, is pay for the research up front. We already do that. We already spend over $40 billion a year on biomedical research through the National Institutes of Health. So double or triple that. You could do it on contract. I wouldn't expect a government agency to do this. Do it on long-term contracts. You could even have the same companies do it. I don't care. You let them bid. But the point would be everything they do is in the public domain. Both the research findings, so they have interim research findings, good or bad. They post them on the web so everyone benefits from that. And then when they ultimately do develop a drug, they carry it through the FDA approval process. Everything is fully in the public domain, so the day the drug is approved by the FDA, it's a generic and could sell for 1%, sometimes less than 1% the price that these drugs are selling for today.
So Dean, I kind of amateurly look at some of these settlements, and the word that's been growing is that the settlements may have a sting for the companies who get them, but it doesn't even come close to chipping away at the profits that were won in any particular case. And so here, the judge has ordered $570-some million, and he's saying that the purpose is to remediate. So he's saying this is the money that we need to help solve the problem that exists. But that doesn't seem to go all the way to all the profits that were made, which were probably higher. What's your take on that?
Well, I'd be quite certain that, again, if you you could just look at Oklahoma, I'd be quite certain that Johnson & Johnson didn't make more than $570 million in profits in Oklahoma. I would be surprised if they didn't do that nationwide. But their annual profits are somewhere in the order of $15 billion, and that's from a wide range of products. I mean, they sell everything in the world, baby powder and
which gives you cancer. We were just talking about that yesterday.
They might need.
Don't get the talc one
too,
if you haven't heard.
But just talking about their profits from the opioids they sell, I'd be very surprised if they made more than $500 million from opioids in Oklahoma. Again, nationwide, I'm sure they did. But again, multiply that by 50. I doubt they come out ahead in that story.
Johnson & Johnson has always been this. We're a family company. We care about you, and they do products like baby powder. With all of that, they have built a trusted name. Do you think that this seems to me like this is going to chip away at that trust?
You would think that would have been a good reason for them not to go to trial. So obviously this gets a lot of publicity. Of course, if they'd had a big settlement, if they paid something comparable to the state in an out-of-court settlement, that had gotten some publicity too. But the decision to go to trial was a big risk for them, and they lost, I would say. So again, I don't minimize that settlement. I'm sure. My guess is they're not happy that they went that route.
So we're at the very end of our segment, and I appreciate you coming on. We're speaking with Dean Baker. He's the author of the blog Beat the Press. He also wrote the book Rigged: How Globalization and the Rules of the Modern Economy Were Structured to Make the Rich Richer. He co-founded the Center for Economic and Policy Research in 1999. Dean, finally, is there something that we can do? Can we pressure our public officials to take a look at patent law?
Yeah, we certainly can. Again, there's been legislation along these lines, and I'd love to see Senators Warren and Sanders. I'm picking on them because I have a lot of respect for both of them, and they've actually raised the issue in the Senate. So it's kind of mind-boggling to me that they're not talking about. They're talking about other ways to control drug prices, but the point I always make is drug prices are a problem because we make them a problem. Instead of talking about bringing them down, how about not making them high to begin with?
Dean, you are intelligent, and that is why they have to talk in sound bites to all of America. If they bring up patent regulation, they're going to have to find a way to talk about it.
I could do the sound bites for him.
Oh, well, okay. Call Dean Baker. We know where to find you. Thank you so much for being on the program. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Great. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Thank you. You're listening to Waking Up with Juliana and King on WBAI 99.5 FM. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Today, I say here in Kentucky to Senator McConnell, but Senator McConnell, hear that, Senator McConnell, 10 out of the 25 poorest counties in this country are located right here in your state. Stop turning your back on your constituents. Stop worrying about your billionaire friends. They're doing just fine. Stop blocking legislation from coming to the floor of the Senate.
Okay, how exciting is this today? You might know, I'm sure you recognize this music. My beautiful listeners, I'm sure you do. Well, we're going to stop it. Check it out. Guess who we have on the show today? Candace Bushnell, author of the iconic book turned hit TV series Sex and the City, is out with a new book which I have read, called Is There Still Sex in the City? In the book, she looks at love and life from all angles: marriage, children, divorce, and bereavement, as well as the very real pressures on women to maintain our youth and to have it all. And, she talks about it from a more mature perspective, like we've aged. It was 20 years ago. Last year was the 20-year anniversary of Sex in the City's first episode. So I hate to scare you, but you've all gotten quite a bit older. Candace, thank you so much for joining us on the program. I appreciate it.
Good morning.
It's so
Great
wonderful
to be here.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. I'm enjoying reading the book. 20 years ago, your book, Sex in the City, reshaped the landscape of pop culture. How does it feel to be so kind of important to culture, and especially to women?
Well, it's terrific.
You feel a certain responsibility because people look to that show, as relief when we have anything going on in our relationships. A lot of women, I polled my friends. They watch the reruns. Young people still watch the show even if they weren't around when the show was on, the original show. How do you handle that kind of responsibility?
I mean, honestly, I don't worry about it too much.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I've written, well, Is There Still Sex in the City, which is the new book.
I'm excited.
Is my 9th book, and it too is going to be turned into a TV series.
That's exciting.
Which will actually be my 4th TV series, because
Yes.
I have Sex in the City, Lipstick Jungle,
Carrie Diaries.
the Carrie Diaries, and this book. And for me, it's really about. I've been writing about women since I was in my 20s, and and was writing really the same kinds of stories that were in Sex and the City.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've kind of been chronicling different passages, in contemporary women's lives, which are quite different than our mothers' lives.
Mm-hmm.
And, the lives of women, generations before, because we have education and we can have careers and earn our own livings. So for me, Is There Still Sex in the City? It's really the, Sex in the City kind of woman 25 years later.
I love
And
the go ahead.
Oh, and I was going to say, the reality is that life goes on after the happily ever after ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's something that nobody ever talks about. So I actually think it's kind of revolutionary to be writing about women
Especially
in their 50s.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're writing about middle-aged women. I mean, this is a group that, we reported not too long ago that they were getting rid of all the anchors on New York One who are above a certain age, and that age is 40, which is 40 is the new
Yes.
30. They're not supposed to be doing that at that, and so middle-aged women who we come into our own, we are powerful, and then all of a sudden we're off the map. You write, this one of my favorite parts about the book is this term that you use, and you've coined it in your book, called middle-aged madness. It's about, well, tell the people what it's about. What forms can middle-aged madness take, and how can people, make it to the other side? Which I guess would be old age madness.
Well, middle-age madness, it happens when there are a lot of life stressors, but also it happens when there could be a little bit of a feeling of invisibility, or it's the feeling of, hey, this is my last gasp before I really get old. So the 50s and 60s, it really is a time when people feel like this is kind of my last chance to do the things that I've always wanted to do, and also it's the last chance to make big changes if you feel like you need to make big changes. A lot of women get divorced in their 50s because
so there's still time, people.
Yeah, I mean, their marriages have just run out of steam, and I think it's really a now or never feeling. It's like, you're going to get through your 50s, you're going to reinvent yourself, or you're going to give up. And just kind of slide into insignificance and old age. So
according to our society, exactly.
Yeah,
according to society.
I've had so many talked to so many women about this book, and women who have read the book, and it's really that feeling of like, you become invisible. Last chance to do something, and you can have a very vibrant life and have all kinds of new experiences. But it's very important to, not to get kind of trapped in all of the things that can hit you in your 50s and 60s. And the reality is, as you pointed out, they wanted to fire any anchors over 40. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have to make career and financial adjustments in their 50s. Things are just,
especially
we have this
now
idea
when
that
nothing is said and there's no, the social safety net's being undermined, all of that you really have to make decisions based on that. One of the things I really liked about this book is there's still Sex in the City, which is not a sequel to Sex in the City. It's not like the same characters. They moved on. There's new characters. They're all very deep and interesting, and you can relate to them, especially if you're a woman. And what I really like is the power of the bonds of friendship between those main characters. What did you try to get across about the female friendships, especially, in this time of life?
Well, one of the things that I noticed, and actually I really found it to be quite wonderful, was how friendships come full circle at this time. And when we're in our 30s, 20s, 30s, you have tons and tons of friends if you're single. But a lot of people end up finding partners, going off, getting married, starting families, and those kinds of, female friendships, they do take a back seat to, the needs of your children and that sort of thing. And now this is a time where children are going off to school.
And you get yourself back.
And you get yourself back,
Yes.
and you get your friends back.
We're speaking with Candace Bushnell. I think everyone knows who you are, but that's just because I watched the show. And I watched the Carrie Diaries. I liked the Carrie Diaries. I know they got a little bit of pushback, but they were one of my favorites. And Killing Monica was a good time in my life, too. Talk to me about the fact that this is a show about middle-aged women. We have a new show. There's a show about, I guess, middle-aged women, Frankie and Grace, or Grace and Frankie. We were just talking about with Michael. I don't think a show about middle-aged women, it's not like you see a lot of them. Can you talk a little bit about, was there any process in getting this show to air? I know you have a long history of successful work.
Well, we've actually just started working on it. So I've just started writing the pilot.
Yeah.
So we're at the very, very beginning stages, but basically there was the Golden Girls. The amazing thing about the Golden Girls is that they were in their 50s.
Really? They seemed a lot older.
They seemed a lot older. They seemed like they must have been 70 or 80, but they were in their 50s.
That's the 50s of the 80s, I guess.
And actually, the book was optioned to be a series really before I had finished it. And
that's great news.
There's not a lot of stuff about this time period, and so it's really about this specific passage.
Maybe,
and there are just so many things.
Maybe you can hire some of the women from New York One to come and play the roles because they're out of work now.
Exactly.
Oh, well, what do you hope that readers come away with after spending time with the ladies of Is There Still Sex in the City? Because you don't have to wait. Obviously, we're talking about the book, and I've really enjoyed just sitting with the book and reading it and getting, just some of the wacky things you talk about, like the bicycle guys who are always trying to take their bicycle upstairs into your apartment when they come and visit, and getting you to ride a bike and flirting on a bike and all of that stuff. And also, So, the whole cougar cub phenomenon, I've enjoyed reading about that. It's, it's on the horizon, I would imagine, for my cohort.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Wait, now I forgot what was the question.
I don't know. I was just saying that it was.
Yeah,
it
we were
was-
just chatting.
And I have a friend here, King, who is sitting here. We discussed it before. He was not. It's great because. Well, go ahead, King. I don't want to.
I know that the show was huge, and I've never seen it. I've seen Mr. Big walk across the screen a couple of times, and so that's all I know about it. But
It's not in your cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, but
for where you are.
I'm getting tempted. This thing about super middling. My first question to you was going to be whether you were in that category yourself. But the question I really
you
have
can't
is
ask that of a lady.
No.
Wait a minute. This
I
guy
can
would-
ask.
This guy never
You know what-
tells me
what's
his
so
age
interesting-
ever, and
what's-
now he wants to
what's
know
so-
you.
What's so interesting, King, is that, I didn't write a lot about men and is there still sex in the city, but men really, they go through their own form of
Sure.
ma'am and middle-aged madness. And I've talked to actually so many men who they say exactly the same things that the women are saying. They feel like maybe they're invisible, they lose some agency in the world, there can be a cutting back of a career, and it's really the same. They are really dealing with the same things that women are dealing with.
Yeah, well, look what they do. They come and they divorce their great wives, and then they come up with these little trophy babes. So I know they're going through something. But the question I wanted to ask you was because you've really transcended two entertainment fields, the book and television, and those are industries. And so I just wanted to ask what the dynamic was for taking a book and adopting it to a TV show. Now you've got a whole lot of suits, men, who are making a lot of decisions about what should or shouldn't be in the program. Just can you talk about that dynamic?
Well, that is, doing, quote, women-oriented kind of show. It's always tricky because I'm not going to lie. It is hard to get the men to get it. And getting lipstick
Oh my gosh, I'm
jungle,
going to just cut that quote and put it right in my sound effects board. It is hard to get the men to get it. Yes.
But when we did Lipstick Jungle, which was about three, quote, powerful, successful women, there's always a guy at the top. But we had four women executives at the network and 4 women executives at the studio. So we had a total of 8 women, and it was really having, it's easy to say no to 1 or 2 women. It's not so easy to say no to 8 women.
Yay. That's fantastic.
8 is
But
enough.
Candace, I know.
So it's you really got to push.
I know that you have your publicist was gracious enough to give us this time with you, and I know that you have another gig at 45, and we are at 48, so I am going to let you go, but thank you so much for being on the program with us today. The book is There Still Sex in the City? It is out. Go get it, and we have one copy to give to a lucky listener who can answer some questions for us about Sex in the City.
Wonderful.
I know it's going to be so fun. We're doing that without you, but thank you so much for being on the program, and best of luck to you. We look forward, when this show gets picked up, to watching it, and we'll announce where it is, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again sometime soon.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and again, best of luck. You're listening to Waking Up. Okay, I'm giving out the phone number. Do you know a lot of stuff about Sex in the City? King, I don't think you're going to be able to answer these questions, but in the last few minutes of the show, we know we're running out of time. In the last few minutes of the show, I have a little. I want to give away this guy. We have a copy of the book. I'm going to just give away for free. This is WBAI. We're not raising money right now. We're just going to do you a little solid. I'll give you the copy of Is There Sex in the City? If you can answer me some questions about actual sex in the city. I see our phone lines are lighting up. 212-209-2877. Michael, when you answer the calls, make sure they don't want to call in and talk about the Newark water crisis, and they're calling to answer the questions about Sex in the City, because that's going to be kind of important. Okay, this is going to be so fun, and I'm going to play some of this great Sex in the City music. Here we go. We need this as our under music while we do this. Okay. Here are some of the questions I want to ask you. Do we have a caller on, Michael? No, we don't. Okay, great. They all do want to open the phone lines and talk about more substantive issues, I'd say. But we thought we'd enjoy your Friday. Here's the question I have for you. Okay, Carrie Bradshaw, one of the most iconic fashion personalities in television history. In one infamous scene, she wears mismatched Christian Louboutin shoes, one pink and one teal. Here's the question. If Carrie worked a minimum wage job today in New York City, how many hours would she have to work to afford a similar pair of Christian Louboutin Jonatina ankle strap sandals? Do we have a caller? Nobody knows this question. Go ahead. Find out. What do you think? You want to guess?
I want to buy a vowel. No, I want to ask a hint. Is it days, years, or decades?
That's a good question. It is kind of in weeks. By the way, what I meant when I asked the question is if you worked in a company with 11 employees or more, because we have two different.
Right.
We have two different. We have two different. Base amounts. Two different. Minimum wage. We have a caller on the line. See if you can answer this question. Hi, who's this?
This is Lady Kate.
Lady Kate, hi. Thanks for calling. Can you got to turn your radio down in the background, and I'm gonna ask you the question. Okay, see if you can answer this question.
Okay.
Okay, I asked it before, but you know how Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City, and you could just take a guess here. She is, she used to wear these fancy shoes, Christian Louboutin shoes. If she worked a minimum wage job in New York City today, so at $15 an hour, how many hours do you think she'd have to work to afford a similar pair of those Christian Louboutin ankle strap sandals that she always used to wear at $15 an hour?
About 45 hours?
I'm going to give you the yes. That's very good. Anywhere between 45 and 58 hours, depending on the sandal. You did a great job. They are $795, these shoes. Can you believe it?
Yes, I do.
It is disgusting, but you're winning the book. See if you can answer this question also. Over the course of 94 episodes, the Sex and the City ladies do a lot of, let's call it, dating. Their combined body count is somewhere near 100 men and one woman. And out of this bunch, how many were people of color?
Ooh. 2.
Oh.
You're good at this. The answer is actually 3, but I'm going to give you 2 because one was both was one of the lesbian characters. So,
Right.
And I feel like you're only, no one's going to know this. This is, you basically called in and you are close enough, so you get the book. And I appreciate that. We're going to keep you on the line after we ask this final question as we near the end of our show.
Okay, thanks.
Which character ran for office trying to unseat Governor Cuomo here in New York City?
The lawyer.
Yes, that is correct also. The lawyer. Yes, Cynthia Nixon is the actress. She played Miranda, the one my husband. Yeah, my husband's like, I don't like Miranda. I'm like, how can you not like Miranda? You married a career woman. I'm a career woman. Miranda is the career part of. Everyone knows that all of those girls are in every woman. The slutty one, the prissy one, the artistic one, and the lawyer one. That's the point of that show.
So it wasn't that he was a Cuomo supporter.
Well, no, he's not a Cuomo supporter. Lady Kate, Michael is going to get your address, and I'm going to put this book in the mail for you. Thank you for listening to our show. Did you want to make any other comment?
Oh, I just want to say that we should definitely always fight for liberation for all.
Yeah. I don't know how Sex and the City is doing that, but, I enjoy watching it when I have my period. Come on, that is the truth for, when you're feeling a little tender. Or when I was pregnant, there was 3 shows I could watch. Golden Girls, Frasier, which just happened to be on at 4 a.m. because I had a lot of insomnia, and no one kills each other there, and it's all like people trying to get along. And Sex and the City. Those were the 3 shows that I can watch when I'm in my sensitive time.
I think I appreciated Sex and the City because it kind of showed the obnoxious side of the city and women. It never really. I appreciated the emotional side of it,
Yeah.
but it never really got into labor. It never really got into what's going on.
It didn't even have black people in the background of the show.
Right.
The first couple years they took it. This is in New York City. Yeah, it was way a dream. It was just a rich white lady's dream. But anyway, we're going to send you the book, so stay on hold. As we put you on hold, we'll get your address. You're listening to Waking Up. Hey, we're not going to be here on Monday. I hope you have a nice Labor Day, but we will be back with Julianne Malveaux and other fabulous guests. We're going to be talking about policing on Tuesday, and then, everything else for the rest of the week. So thanks for listening. Stay tuned.
Have a good holiday.